Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, it's fascinating right from the get-go. The core idea presented is
Yeah.
the author basically had two dads shaping his views on money. There was his actual father, very educated, smart, but, financially not doing great. That's the poor dad.
Right.
And then there was his best friend's dad. Didn't finish high school, but built, considerable wealth. He's the rich dad.
And the real tension, the problem these sources focus on, it comes from the completely different advice these two gave, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's standard advice. Go to school, study hard, get good grades, find a safe job.
The path we're all told to follow.
Exactly. The source material argues that path isn't just old-fashioned now. It might actually be, pretty dangerous in today's world.
Dangerous how?
The argument is that traditional schooling, it just doesn't teach you the financial smarts you need. It leaves people unprepared, basically.
Okay. So our mission here for this deep dive is to pull out the key lessons, the really important bits from these sources. We want to understand those contrasting viewpoints and, figure out what this material suggests you actually need to know to handle your finances today.
Yeah, let's get into it, see what it really says.
So first off, this attack on the old advice, study hard, get that secure job. The source says it's risky now. Why? What's the reasoning given?
Well, the main point is the world's just different. That idea of working for one company your whole life and being totally secure, it's largely gone, according to this. You hear about downsizing, right-sizing all the time.
Job security isn't what it maybe once was?
That's the claim. It's much less certain.
And what about things like pensions or Social Security?
The material really pushes the idea that you just can't bank on those systems like, say, your parents or grandparents might have. That secure job foundation, it's presented as much less stable.
There's that story in there about the author's son, right? Seeing his parents work super hard, make decent money, but always stressed about bills and debt.
Yeah, and the son basically says, I don't want that. He saw them running on that treadmill, work harder, earn more, but then just pay more taxes, take on more debt. He kind of instinctively saw a problem with that whole cycle.
Wanted something different.
Right. And a big piece of this, according to the material, is a failure of the education system.
Oh, so?
It argues the system fails people when it comes to money. There's an analogy used like trying to build a huge skyscraper on just a thin little concrete slab. Without that solid financial foundation trying to build wealth or even just be stable, it's really, really tough.
Like they teach you carpentry, but not how to pour the foundation.
That's a good way to put it. The source talks about seeing highly educated people playing some financial game and just, struggling with the basics. They didn't get how their income statement and balance sheet connected or how buying an asset changes their monthly cash flow.
They knew their job, but not how money worked after they got paid.
Exactly, which leads right into what the material calls the absolute key difference between the rich and everyone else. Really understanding assets versus liabilities.
Okay, this sounds fundamental.
It's presented as the core concept. Seems simple, but apparently it's where most people stumble. The rich dad's definition in the source is super straightforward. An asset puts money in your pocket, period.
And a liability.
Takes money out of your pocket.
That's really simple.
That's the point made, yeah. The challenge isn't the definition itself. It's overcoming maybe years of thinking differently. We're just not thinking in those specific terms at all.
All right, so based on that definition, let's talk about the big one. A house. Most people think of it as their main asset. Why does this framework often call it a liability for the poor and middle class?
Because if you stick strictly to that definition, does it put money in or take money out? For most people, a house consistently takes money out. You've got the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, upkeep, repairs.
All cash flowing out.
Right. And the material also argues it ties up a huge chunk of your money that maybe could be working for you somewhere else in an actual income-producing asset.
And the whole moving every few years thing.
Yeah, that's mentioned too. People move, get a new, often bigger mortgage, and kind of reset the clock. They might end up paying for decades on a house they never actually own outright.
The sources also talk a lot about cash flow patterns.
Oh, absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
The cash flow diagrams, they tell the real story. It's not just about how much you earn, it's about where that money goes once you have it. Does it just flow out to cover expenses and liabilities? Or does some of it flow into buying assets that then generate more income?
That explains the lottery winner example, right?
Yeah.
Making a fortune but ending up broke.
Exactly. The argument is, if your basic pattern is just spending whatever comes in, then getting more money doesn't fix the pattern. It just makes you spend faster, maybe dig a deeper hole. It highlights the lack of financial intelligence, basically.
Okay, so if just working harder for a paycheck isn't the answer presented here, what is? This phrase, mind your own business, what does that mean in this context?
It doesn't necessarily mean you have to, like, quit your job and start a company tomorrow. Minding your own business here means actively building up your asset column. Your profession, yeah, that's how you earn your paycheck. Maybe you're a teacher, a plumber, whatever. Your business is the collection of assets you own that generate income for you, separate from your job.
Oh, okay. Like the Ray Kroc and McDonald's story they use.
That's a perfect example. His profession, you could say, was selling things, milkshake machines, then franchises. But his business, the source reveals, was actually owning the real estate underneath all those McDonald's restaurants.
So McDonald's became this huge real estate empire.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The franchisees paid rent, covered costs, and that built this massive asset column for Kroc's company. It's a complete opposite of just working for your boss.
Paying taxes to the government, interest to the bank.
Right. Instead, you're focused on acquiring things that put money directly into your pocket. The material contrasts this with the typical pattern for the poor and middle class, who, it argues, spend most of their financial lives working for everyone else.
And this ties into how people buy luxuries too, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a really key distinction they make. The source claims the wealthy tend to buy luxuries last. They use the income generated by their assets to pay for the fancy car or the big trip.
Whereas the poor and middle class.
Often buy luxuries first, using their salary, or worse, going into debt. Trying to look rich, maybe, but actually just digging themselves deeper into the liability column.
Which just keeps them stuck, running on that treadmill.
That's the picture painted, yeah. A cash flow pattern that traps them.
So, okay, how do you actually build that asset column then? The material talks a lot about developing financial intelligence.
Yeah, this is treated as super important, something you have to keep working on. The source suggests our emotions play a huge role. Things like fear of being broke, fear of losing money that pushes people toward seeking that safe job, and then desire, wanting nicer things that drive spending.
And ignorance makes it worse.
That's the argument. Not understanding how money really works just amplifies those emotions, leading to, well, bad decisions. It's about misgrading your feelings around money, not just the math.
So it's psychology as much as finance.
Definitely. And this is where that idea of work to learn comes in. Sometimes, the source suggests, you should take a job not just for the paycheck, but for the skills it teaches you, like sales, marketing, communication, because that knowledge itself becomes an asset.
Learning from mistakes, from failure, seems really big in this philosophy too.
Huge. They talk about like the Texas attitude or the Alamo story. It's not about avoiding losses altogether that's impossible in investing. It's about how you handle the loss. Do you learn from it? Do you get back up and try again? Smarter.
Playing to win versus playing not to lose.
Exactly. Playing not to lose means being super cautious, maybe overly diversified, maybe missing big opportunities. Playing to win means being focused, accepting calculated risks, learning from setbacks.
And what about dealing with doubt? That inner cynic.
Yeah, the material calls cynics chicken littles, always expecting the sky to fall. And it argues that doubt is really expensive. It keeps you from acting on opportunities. There's an example comparing someone putting money in a safe, low-return CD versus someone exploring something like tax lien certificates, which might have much higher returns but seem riskier to the dater.
The doubter misses out because they don't even investigate.
Right, they pay an opportunity cost. Then there's this idea, which sounds a bit wild at first, pay yourself first.
How does that work? Sounds like you'd just run out of money for bills.
Well, the way it's framed is as a discipline builder. You allocate money to your assets, buying stocks, real estate, whatever, before you pay your monthly expenses or even taxes. The idea is the pressure from those upcoming bills forces you to be more creative, to find ways to generate more income rather than just dipping into savings or selling assets.
So the pressure becomes motivation.
That's the theory presented. It forces financial ingenuity. The author claims it helped him build wealth while still managing his obligations.
The source also briefly mentions using things like corporations.
Yeah, it nods to the idea that understanding legal structures, like setting up a corporation, can offer big advantages, especially with taxes and protecting assets. It flags it as another important area of financial education, though these excerpts don't go deep into the how.
Okay. And this concept of being an Indian giver with investments, what's that about?
It's kind of a blunt way to describe a specific investing goal. Sophisticated investors, the source suggests, often ask first, how fast can I get my initial investment back? Once you've recouped your original money, Everything else the asset generates, or any appreciation, is essentially profit on a free asset.
Can you give an example?
Sure, maybe you buy a stock, it goes up quickly, you sell just enough shares to get your initial cash back and let the rest ride. Or you buy a cheap foreclosed house, maybe fix it up a bit, then refinance it based on the higher value to pull all your initial cash out. You still own the house, it's maybe generating rent, but your original capital is back in your pocket, ready for the next investment.
Getting your seed money back quickly.
That's the core idea. Ray Kroc wanting the real estate, basically for free, fits this pattern too.
So beyond these specific strategies, there are other habits mentioned for boosting financial IQ.
Yeah, a few others pop up, like being mindful of who you hang out with, the power of association. The idea that learning never stops you, master one formula for making money, then you immediately start learning the next one. Having heroes, people whose financial success you can study and try to emulate.
And teaching others.
Right, teaching is presented as a powerful way to solidify your own understanding. You have to really know something to explain it well.
It feels like ultimately it all comes back to taking action. You can learn all this stuff, but
But it doesn't mean anything until you do something.
yeah.
Yeah, the material is very clear on that. Action always beats inaction. There's an analogy about gold miners. The gold is out there, opportunities exist, but you need the training, the financial intelligence to even see them. And then you need the guts to actually act and try to acquire them.
People are too busy looking for that secure paycheck, maybe.
Or just more income, yeah. Instead of
fair.
training their minds to see potential assets and then, actually going for it.
There's a story at the end, in the epilogue, that really seems to pull all these threads together. The one about the friend saving for his kid's college.
Oh, yeah, that's a great illustration. This friend was doing the sensible thing, right? Saving, I think it was $300 a month, putting it away for college. He'd saved up like $12,000 over years.
But he needed way more.
Way more. Something like $400,000 for 4 kids. And college wasn't that far off, just saving his earned income. It was looking pretty hopeless, honestly.
So applying these rich dad ideas, they looked for a different way.
Exactly. Instead of just saving, they looked for an asset. They found a foreclosed house, got it for, I think, around $79,000. But the friend only had to put about $7,000 of his own cash down because he could assume the existing loan.
Okay, so a small amount of his capital controlled a much larger asset.
Right. And here's the key, the cash flow. They rented it out immediately. After paying the mortgage, taxes, insurance, all the expenses, the house actually put $125 into his pocket every single month.
Wow, so instead of his money just sitting there, maybe growing slowly in a fund, this asset was actively paying him.
Yes, building his asset column. And over the years, that $126 a month added up, plus the house itself went up in value. So this one investment, made using financial intelligence instead of just saving, generated the money needed for college, way more than just saving $300 a month ever could have, and apparently helped with retirement too.
It's a powerful example of assets working for you.
Totally. Guided by financial smarts and actually taking action. It shows a fundamentally different path than just working hard, earning, and trying to save.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the source material, it really hammers home this need for a fundamental shift in thinking about money, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all about moving from just being someone who works for money, trading your time for a wage, to becoming someone who gets money working for you by acquiring assets. And step one, absolutely critical according to this, is knowing the difference between an asset and a liability.
And the point is made pretty strongly. This kind of financial intelligence, it's not about your current salary or your education level. It's presented as something you can learn.
Absolutely. Available to anyone who decides to really study how money works, no matter where they're starting from.
It definitely makes you stop and think about your own situation, Am I just focused on my job, my profession, or am I actively trying to build that asset column? What's my own cash flow pattern actually look like day to day?
Yeah, looking beyond just the paycheck to see where the money goes after you earn it.
And maybe the final thought to leave people with coming out of this material is this idea: real wealth isn't just the size of your paycheck. It's about how much you keep, how hard that money works for you, and, well, understanding the rules of the financial game.
And it kind of puts the ball back in your court, doesn't it? Makes you
Yeah.
think about the choices you're making every day, how you use your time, how you use your money, and maybe crucially, what you decide to learn, what you put in your head.
So what choice are you making today?